2024 Trinidad Garza Leadership Forum. This is a great opportunity to have. We have speakers come in every semester to speak to us, to bring government to the student rather than always in a classroom setting. So having government come to the student, we find is a great advantage. That gives you a chance to gain real insight and information into how government works from noted civic leaders that we have, and we're so pleased to have in Dallas. Today I'd like to welcome our newest speaker and honored guest, Mr. T.C. Broadnax. Some of you might remember him as the principal of the day, I believe, last year. And we are so pleased to have him back. He is the city manager of the city of Dallas, the 9th largest city in the United States, and a city that's always on the move and always growing. I'd also like to recognize a few extra people. We have, out of his office, we have Miss Cadena, Felicia, and we have Miss Rojas here with us. And then we have Miss Toscano. She'll be here also. But also I want to thank you on behalf of our principal, Ms. Sanchez and Mr. Lacey and Mr. Harris. They make this possible for us. So give a round of applause to our A little bit of a heads up about Mr. Broadnax. As I mentioned, he's our city manager in Dallas. He's been here about 7 or 8 years. Prior to that, he was a city manager in Tacoma, Washington, assistant city manager in San Antonio, and the assistant city manager in Pompano Beach, Florida. So he has 23 years of wonderful experience under his belt to tell us about how cities work and the importance of city management. On top of that, he has a master's degree in public education from right up the road at the University of North Texas, right up the street from us. He has a bachelor's degree in political science and communication. That's a double bachelor's degree from him. I believe his first job was an intern, was it, in Topeka, Kansas, working as a intern when he was with Washburn University. Ms. Broadnax hails from Kansas, I believe from Topeka itself. In high school, I'm going back deeply now. In high school, he was he played for the state 9A state champs, 1987 in basketball. Mr. Broadnax was the all-state point guard for that team. So I imagine you don't miss too many math games. And he played at Washburn University for the fighting Ichabod's. Now, what is Ichabod?
I have no idea.
And then,
Top hat guy.
well, with no further ado, let you speak. Listen to Mr. Broadnax. After he speaks, we'll open up time for you to have some Q&A and question times for you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me? All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Norton, for that wonderful introduction. And it is definitely great to look out here and see so many people, hopefully today, interested in learning more about local government. And so why don't we get started with just really some basic understandings or just some questions. How many of you know what cities are responsible for? And how many of you live in the city of Dallas? Can you raise your hand? Okay. All right. So, I am the city manager. How many of you know what a city manager is? few people? Okay. How about what a mayor is? Heard of a mayor? Okay, you've obviously heard of a governor, right? And obviously the president. And so when we start to talk about local government, and that's where I'll spend most of my time talking with you today, it's similar in structure as it relates to kind of the roles. And so for me at least, in local government, in the city of Dallas, as Mr. Norton said, is the 9th largest city in the country. In most large cities, like the city of Dallas, they're actually typically ran and all the day-to-day responsibilities are handled by the mayor. Like the city of New York, right? The city of Los Angeles, the city of Chicago. And those bigger cities usually are ran by an elected official, someone that your parents and at some point someday you will vote for to actually be responsible for all the things that happen in your cities. There are some cities though, however, similar to Dallas, where there are elected officials, mayors and council members that serve in those roles. They're elected, but they serve as, and similar to like a board of directors. Do you know what a board of directors is, any of you? It's like in the private sector, like in corporations like AT&T or Microsoft. There are a group of people that govern and set policies and all the rules, and then they hire a chief executive officer to actually run the day-to-day operations of all the functions that go on in their organization. Well, local government, particularly those formed like the city of Dallas, where the mayor is not that chief executive, they hire a city manager like myself to actually run the city. And so we're the 9th largest city in the country here in Dallas, but we're the 3rd largest city that has the form of government that requires and allows for a city manager to run their city. The other two in front of this city as it relates to size that has the same council manager form of government are Phoenix and San Antonio, which are slightly bigger than Dallas. And so what that means is, for example, as you can imagine, how many of y'all are familiar with some of the services that cities provide? Have y'all talked about that? Can you tell me what services you think cities provide? No, he said education. So the school district, actually in this city, and in this state primarily, the school district is ran by separate independent operations. So the Dallas Independent School District, the word independent is key because they hire a superintendent that then hires principals and does all the other things that actually help you guys learn every day. Yes, ma'am. Yes, public transportation, streets and roads. Yes, ma'am. She said parks and recreation. You are correct. Yes, ma'am. You know, in this case, the city of Dallas does not have our own electric company. We actually rely on Encore to provide power, and they provide power for everyone. Even the city buys power from Encore. But in some cities, they actually do own their own electric utility. Dallas is not one of those cities though, but that is a good answer. In some cities actually do that and have that function. Anybody else? So, yes sir.
Garbage and waste collection?
Yes. Sanitation, yes. And recycling, we actually operate that, so great. But the other types of services that we offer, things, yes sir. Thank you. Police and fire. So, thank you. And there are a lot of other things that we do. We do code enforcement, which makes sure that your neighbors and people that your parents' homes and in their apartments, they're doing the things that they need to do. They're not, outside making noise late at night. They're not throwing garbage all over the place or causing disturbances. We've got an Office of Homeless Solutions, obviously that works to help put people in housing who are homeless and out on the street. We have finance departments. We have areas where they help us buy products and goods. We've got many services that I think you probably take for granted. You mentioned streets. We have a transportation department. We have a litany 311 when you have a problem and there's something wrong in your neighborhood or something that you want someone to come and fix. You will just dial 311 and someone will pick up the phone and you can tell them what you want and ask them for help, and then they'll direct you wherever you need to be. And so we do a lot of things that, I think, as I'll talk about later, provide opportunity and jobs for people. Can you imagine how many employees the city of Dallas has? Anybody want to take a guess? No, I don't wish that, but no, that's a little high. Anybody else? Yes. So the city of Dallas has about 13,000 employees that work for us, doing all of those ranges of services. And I'll probably tick off a list. We also do court administration, municipal courts, aviation. We actually own 2 airports. The city of Dallas owns Love Field. How many of you have been to Love Field? Where Southwest flies out of? As well as Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The city of Dallas and Fort Worth own that airport together. We own 7 shares, so to speak, out of 11 of that airport. So we own the majority of it. We operate libraries, your cultural facilities that you may go to. And so we do a lot. And all those employees, 13,000 of them, except for probably about 300, actually work for me. And so it's my responsibility as a city manager to direct what they do and assign people to work with them that manage their departments, and then report back to me to make sure that everything that in many cases many residents take for granted, it actually happens throughout the day and throughout the year. When we have storms or when we need emergency assistance and things of that nature, all of our teams come together to make sure that we can do those things. And so, as Mr. Norton said, I've been doing that in the city of Dallas for about the last 7 years. And it's really been a great experience to really figure out and learn this community, but also, as you might imagine, there are many things that come up throughout the years that ultimately require us as a city government, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that structure, that require us to talk and work with our other forms of government here in this great state, whether that's the state in partnership with them to do things, or the county. I understand you had the opportunity to have Judge Clay Jenkins come and speak with you. Were any of you in the room when he was coming to talk to you about what the county does? And so we work very closely with the county in partnership, particularly over these last 3 years when it comes to how we manage through the pandemic and making sure that people during the pandemic, one, had shelter, didn't get evicted and things of that nature if they had lost their jobs, actually coordinating the testing for COVID-19 to make sure people in many communities knew where testing locations were, as well as obviously the issue of getting your vaccinations and making sure that we had those in the proper location. And so we work very closely with the county across many of their services, but the city, for the most part, given how large we are, about 1.3 million, we're responsible for the bulk of things that residents come to expect when it comes to services and or assistance that they need. And so, as Mr. Norton talked about, he talked a little bit about my education and the skill sets and the other things that are required to do this role. I wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to share with you, because one of the things we're focused on as a city, we'll probably lean into a little bit more, is trying to figure out how we attract more young people to want to come and work for the city. And so how many of you have already figured out what you want to do with the rest of your life? What job you want to have, what you want to major in college? Has everybody figured that out yet? Y'all figured that out? Well, raise your hand and tell. I'm going to ask you, who's figured it out? Tell me what you want to do.
I want to get a major in criminal justice.
Criminal justice? Okay. And I'm assuming you may want to be a police officer?
SWAT. I want to be in the SWAT organization.
A SWAT person? Okay. Well, you got to be a police officer first, and then you get promoted up and then can join the SWAT. Anybody else already figure it out? Yes, ma'am. Physical therapy? Okay. All right. That's a great profession. Anybody else? Yes, sir. An engineer? Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. Film and media. Great. Okay. Anybody else? Yes? Nursing? Okay. So listen, I asked that question just to share with you that when you think about any of those professions, and you think about a city as large as Dallas, it can even be a smaller city, they may not do as much. We have about 500 different position classifications or jobs that you can do when you work for the city. Whether that's you want to be an accountant, you could possibly work in local government in the finance department. Obviously, this gentleman said he wanted to work in SWAT. Obviously, we do police and we do fire as well. And that also includes emergency medical services. Anybody that wanted to be a paramedic could actually come and work for the city. We've got people that do carpentry for the city. We got people that fix air conditioning and machinery. We've got people that buy products for us. We've got people actually even that provide extensions for rehabilitation for people in the healthcare field. We employ nurses in our health departments as local government. We do quite a bit of things. Obviously, someone mentioned sanitation related work. We got individuals that work with children and do things around recreation. We've got people who do arts and media related things. We have our own TV station. And so one of the things we're trying to work towards is what do we do to help young people like yourselves coming straight out of high school that either want to go to college and end up going, or may want to take some time to figure out what they want to do, but want to work in a profession while they do it, finding ways to offer internships and opportunities for young people to, figure out through actually doing if there's a place for them and a space for them in local government. We've got people that work for us that have worked for the city for 30 to 35 years and they came straight out of high school into positions and have done several different things throughout their career because at least at the city of Dallas, we've got about 40 departments. So you can do all kinds of things and actually stay with one organization if you choose to do it. And or, as many of us have done, gone away to college and major in something that may not be, in your mind, directly related to something that a city would do. But I will tell you, people tend to choose whether it's the private sector, where it's about going and, as I say, make widgets and or focus on making money or profits for your organization and company, or those who actually want to give back and stay in the community that they live in, but also give back through public service, but actually be able to do their job and learn and grow in the profession that they went to school for. And so as Mr. Norton talked about my academic background, I kind of knew very early that I wanted to be in local government. Didn't quite know what a city manager did or does, but I knew I didn't want to be a mayor or an elected official. I actually wanted to work with people, communicate with them, help them, and assist them. And so I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in communications because I thought I wanted to go into journalism first and write about things. And it was actually organizational communication that I then shifted into. And then in my last full year of college, I picked up a political science degree. For that, allowed me to then go to the University of North Texas in Denton and get my master's degree in public administration. So that's what I've done my entire career. It really taught me about the structures of government, what governments do, finance, dealing with elected officials, dealing with residents, and just learning the basic skill sets. And that's what I've been doing for the last 23 to 24 years of my career. And I will tell you, it has challenged me, but it actually has helped me as I talk to other people about getting into local government and the types of approaches and the skill sets you need. And I'll just share a few of those with you that I've learned over the years. One, you gotta be comfortable and willing to want to work with people and listen to people. And as I share with the people that work for me, that comes with having an ability to have empathy and understand that not everybody is going to show up in the same manner and at the same place. And some of that is probably predicated on where they might have grown up, what neighborhoods they've lived in, what opportunities they never got a chance to see, or their family in some cases. They may, as the young person, be the first one, in some cases, to even graduate from high school, right? Or to even go to college and graduate. And so you never know who you're gonna meet in a community as large as Dallas. But what we do in our environment and what I've had to learn is you gotta be able to meet people where they are. And so that's a skill set of not being judgmental, but when you're working and you're doing the work that you do in public service, you've got to understand that by the time they get to you, meaning in local government or your city, they probably had many, many doors closed in their face looking for the assistance or the help. And so I always encourage the people that work for me is to really just stop and take a minute and figure out how you're going to help someone, regardless of what your day may be encountering. Because they're finally showing up to a place that ultimately should have an ability to help them and or share with them where they need to go to get that. You need to obviously experience and understand that it's going to be a learning and growing opportunity in any field that you are, and local government is a place that again is adaptable, and people come with great demands because they always expect, again, their city to be able to do any and everything for them that they may or may not be able to do for themselves. You obviously have to have an education. It doesn't have to be a college degree. It doesn't have to be a 4-year degree or a post 4-year degree, but you at least need a high school degree to get certain jobs in our city. You gotta be willing to roll up your sleeves and learn from those around you. You gotta be able to work as a team and with groups. And so I think you learn a lot of that when obviously, as I didn't think about it then, when you do group assignments, right? Someone picks who the leader is, who's gonna do the most talking, and who's gonna put in the most work, and there's some folks that don't put in a lot, but they get the same benefit, and I'm not looking at you because it's you. But my point is, you gotta always be open to learning, and it's just really a people business. But I would hope at some point, whether you want to go and make a lot of money, that you realize that there are local government options for you. And so, again, here is what I'd say about local government. And you watch a lot of TV if you watch CNN, and it's really talking a lot about the federal levels of things and what goes on at the state. And we pay attention to that because we coordinate and work with the federal government and the state government. But as I like to say, local government is the closest to where the people are, and we're the closest to doing and reacting to the things that people do and deal with in their day-to-day environment. To me, that is why I believe it is really the most purposeful and important level of government in the country. Because at the end of the day, if the federal government doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and the state government hasn't done what they're supposed to do, there is only one other level beyond the county, and it's typically the city that is trying to fill in the gaps to meet the needs of the residents and people in their community to make sure that their quality of life and what they experience when they walk out of their doors every morning or come home in the evenings provides them the opportunity for their families to thrive and feel safe and live out what they would expect for their kids to be. And that is what America is all about. And that is fundamentally allowing people to achieve their highest aspirations. And so I would say to you, as I close and then we get into some Q&A, be focused on the things that you take for granted today, and you're wondering why you're doing math, or why you've got to study history, or why all those other things that you believe have nothing to do with what you ever want to do in your life, why you have to do those for the 4 years that you're in high school. And I thought the exact same way. But I tell you, when I look back on it, there were a lot of things that may not be directly relevant, but there's some things particularly specific, whether that's math or English and the other things that are going to be fundamental building blocks for you, whether in college or in life. But the underlying issue and effort is, accomplishing something and working hard at it and seeing it through, that spans through any and everything that you ultimately have to do in your life. And so again, I want to thank y'all for just listening to me, and then I will turn it back over to Mr. Norton so that we can do any Q&A that you might have. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Some of y'all have been preparing for some questions. I have one quick question right off the bat. Speaking of skill sets, being a city manager in our size of city, what type of skill set does a person need to have 13 bosses?
So thank you, and I actually have 15 bosses, so it makes it even tougher. I will tell you, you need to have patience. You need to have the ability to listen and then be able to take the necessary time to process, I think, what you may be hearing from varying voices that may be different as it relates to what their expectations are. And then be able to try to find a way to organize that and then share with them, at least from your thinking, one, to make sure that you understand what they're saying collectively, and then framing that from, okay, so if this is what you want me to do, then this is what I think I heard you say, and then here's how I would accomplish it. But it's really the ability to listen and understand, and then have it be relatable to either some of your own experiences or have a team around you that has all of those different types of experiences, so that then you can come back and share what at least you think you understood to be what their concerns were and questions were, and then here's how they might get to a better understanding and accomplish whatever goal they're trying to do.
Thank you. One of our students have a question. Go right up here. Here we go.
My name is Emmanuel Adebayo, and Mr. Broadnax. You've been the city manager for several years now, as in you started, I believe, 2017. And in that span of time, in general, would you say that the overall state of Dallas and its well-being, would you say it's improved, stayed the same, has not improved, and if so, how has it or has it not improved?
That is a great question. So, as you indicated, I've been city manager for 7 years. I would hope that things have improved for people, whether individually or collectively in the city from the time I arrived till today. One of the things that I would point to, that I would say why I think that, is I think the conversations that I've been able to have and or work with the city council and the mayor on, as well as my team around equity and ensuring that resources, whether dollars or actual product as it relates to things that we've improved in neighborhoods, particularly neighborhoods in historically underserved areas. In the city of Dallas, that is primarily in the southern part of our city, that we've done a lot of work there to improve the quality of life, put investments there, build housing there that is more mixed income for a lot more and different types of people at different ranges in the community. I think we've made great strides there. One of the things I'm probably most proud of that gets to that is last year, the city adopted its first ever racial equity plan that allows us to focus on the inequities in our community and really dig deep into how we change the outcomes for people in this community, particularly in historically disadvantaged areas that have never had it focused on their areas and their neighborhoods. And whether that's investments in our park systems, investment in our recreation programs for our youth, where we've placed infrastructure dollars to put in water and sewer that didn't exist, where we've improved streets, those kind of things that should make people feel better about where they live, we've really done that quite substantially over the last 7 years. And we did not do that, I would say, in great doses prior to my arrival. And I think we've pointed the city in the right direction and have focused on trying to make sure, again, that it shouldn't matter where you live, shouldn't matter what your zip code is. You should always have some basic understanding that the city is going to be working hard to try to improve your outcomes. And I think those are the things that I would say when you ask me, are we in a better place? I think we are. And that may not be for everybody, but we've tried to touch as many people that we have the ability to touch to try to improve their lives and their neighborhoods. Great question.
Question?
All right, to follow up with your statement as far as you saying your investments and it's not how you do infrastructure in certain communities of disadvantage. That's really my question as to what has been done as far as the negative aspects that minorities over Black and brown communities get as far as the basketball gentrification in certain areas. What has been done to prevent that, and what's been done to help those people?
Some tough questions, guys. I need to stop watching CNN, man. What's going on? So, great question. And in all seriousness, I was just in a conversation last week because we were talking about historic preservation and the changing dynamics of what that means to some people. And in some places and spaces in certain communities, that means gentrification, wholesale gentrification. So when you look at, and so let me put it in perspective for you, the structure of the revenues that the city receives, right? I talked about how many employees we've got, I talked about the services we provide. But the revenue and the things that allow for those services to happen, the city has two primary revenue sources. One is property taxes, which equate to about 57% of all of our revenue. And that goes into a place called the general fund, which is about $1.8 billion that we spend to do most of the services that cities provide. Well, 57% of that comes from property tax. The other 35 or so comes from sales tax. And then the rest comes from miscellaneous small franchise fees and other little revenues, fines and things of that nature. Well, the whole system primarily in this city and in Texas and in most local governments is property tax. And so you get that from the value of businesses and the land and the buildings that they have, and then from residential places like your homes or apartments and the land that it sits on, and then the structure itself. And so what happens is cities spend most of their time, inclusive of Dallas, focused on what we call economic development. And that means the more value, meaning buildings, structures, and things of that nature that we can put on the ground and have built, and then they become value. Someone says, I'm investing $60 million in a new apartment complex or $400 million in a new building like we've seen downtown. We take that value and then we apply a tax rate to it, and then that tax rate times the value becomes the tax dollars that we get. So, to your question around gentrification and what we're doing about it, and where the dynamic is in us always wanting to add more revenue, to do more things for residents. That comes at a cost in some cases that causes the friction, because the more new things we put means in some cases we've got to replace things that are of lesser value. So people will buy buildings, buy homes for a small and lower price, and then put something of more value on it. So the challenge we've had, to your point, is when that occurs, well, what happens to the affordability for people who used to live in that same neighborhood, maybe even in that house that no longer can live there? They get moved away, and then new things happen, and then new people, because new things attract new people, come into neighborhoods and they displace a lot of people who have historically lived in certain communities. So what the city is doing about that is, one, we're mindful of that when we're, one, encouraging and building new housing, or we participate. So that, as I talked about a little earlier, we want to provide for, if a new housing project is being built, multifamily or even single family, that if we're involved in it and we put tax dollars in it, we will allow and expect them to provide for more affordable units, where the rents that are market rate, that are displacing people, could be $2,000 a month. We'll ensure, if we're investing, that they have some units at $1,000 and $800 if we can pull it off. Or we're creating jobs for people nearer to certain other establishments that allow them to, again, be able to live close to where they work. Or in some cases, we've got areas where we protect them, whether they're historic or not. We can put overlays on that don't allow for certain types of new things to be built. And so we've got an anti-displacement program that we also look at, that is ushered in by our planning department, that looks at those things to make sure, again, that folk aren't just gentrified out of their neighborhood. And I've often said, and I say it more publicly, is that people in certain communities have been asking for grocery stores, more retail, sit-down restaurants, all kinds of nice amenities. One of our biggest challenges that we've got is making sure that when they've been asking for it for 30 years and it finally shows up, that they're actually able to stay in those neighborhoods and actually benefit from those things. So that is a great question, but that is a tension and a stress that is never going to go away here, because people like new things and we like services and we got to pay for those things. And so that's the challenge. But that's what we've been doing, and we've tried to do that through, whether it's rental assistance, whether it's we put dollars into rehabilitation to allow people to improve their own home so that people don't come along and want to buy it because it's actually still kept up even after 30 or 40 years. And so that's what we do to try to assist in that effort.
There's a question as far as from an economical standpoint. We know that Dallas is a rapidly growing city, and as far as even economically, even the forefront of a lot of things with a lot of booming businesses. And with that being said, we also see that as far as simultaneously, you see a lot of construction everywhere across the city, and we even see that Dallas, the city of Dallas is one we're short on a lot of homes and stuff because they're behind on infrastructure. And with that being said, I want to know what has been done with that and how to get to a point where it's more reactive and not proactive.
I don't know where y'all got this guy from. Those are questions that I wish were asked more often by a lot of adults in our community. So, I will tell you, let's talk first about your last statement about kind of where we are and how it appears that we are being reactive to things. So how many of you have ever heard of the term redlining? Right. So what that means in essence, if you understand it, is that long time ago, if not too long ago, there was a term and a effort that they called redlining. And that was basically drawing lines in communities around places where, in judgment of where you would not invest any dollars, right? You wouldn't allow for new homes to be built. Banks wouldn't give loans for people in those neighborhoods, even to improve their homes or even to acquire homes. They were labeled as quote unquote minority areas, is a kinder word for it. And so Dallas is no different historically than a lot of other places in the country where redlining was a practice. And so the result of redlining was, as we think about today and we see the conditions in certain neighborhoods, governments and or private investment never occurred there. So the infrastructure, meaning water and sewer, was never placed there, or roads, because people wouldn't let you invest. Even in the city's charter, meaning that's the constitution for the city and what we can and cannot do, our water utility, who would often partner with private sector folk to help put in utilities, Well, we couldn't do that because no private sector person wanted to partner with us to put money into the southern part of our city. And then there's rules that say we just can't go and do it ourselves because that's a growth management issue and there's some restrictions. So I would say the reactive nature of it is after 50, 60, 70 years of redlining and an afterthought in certain parts of our community, we're playing catch up where private sector dollars funded most of the infrastructure in the northern parts of our city. That didn't happen in the South, so local government has to. And so I would say to you two things. One, we're starting to do that, actually. There were actually identified about 63 locations in the southern part of our city 3 years ago that we identified that had people living in them. They lived in homes along certain streets and areas, but they didn't have adequate water and they did not have sewer service. So the city council, based on my recommendation, recommended and funded about $43 million to ensure that water and sewer, where we have people living, not vacant areas, would put water and sewer in those neighborhoods at no cost to those individuals. Secondly, when we started to talk back to economic development, understanding that infrastructure is a gap, we have certain vehicles of financing called tax increment financing, where we shave off tax dollars from new things that we build, and then we can give that back to private sector people to do more of the things we want. Well, those tax increment financing zones that we create, they last. They could next Wednesday say they no longer want me working there. And I would have no recourse other than to say, okay, thank you very much, and what have you. I will say this about me, at least for Dallas. I can only speak for me. And I talked to you about my career and its length. Well, I will just say this. When I graduated from the University of North Texas in 1993, one of my main goals, and it was a stated goal at the time, is that I actually wanted to be and planned to be the city manager for the city of Dallas at some point in my career. And I called that in 1993. So every job that I took with the expectation to learn more, to build my skill set and my resume, to ultimately allow me to get this job. And so, as I said, the average number of years is 5 years. Well, I've been here 7 years. And so my commitment, one, is to this city and the people in the community, particularly the southern part of our city, that you have to work so much harder to try to improve. And so I would say this, one of the only things that have kept me here, because it's not an easy job, is because I love the people here, and I love the work that I do, and I love the purpose that we do the work, and in the spirit of how we do it. Now, I'm not going to be here forever, and that may be because they don't want me to be here anymore, or it may be because there is a better opportunity for me and my family. But most, if not all, city managers get into this work because they love to serve people. And regardless of what community it is, if you're serving people, I think it's a noble profession, because you could probably make a lot more money making widgets and selling computers or doing something else than you can in local government. But we choose to do this again because we love working with people and for people. And I think it takes a special bit of character to want to continue to do that, even when folk criticize you every day, when you're in the newspaper every day, and when people in most cases don't just stop sometimes and tell you, thank you, you're doing a good job. So I appreciate the question. Great question.
Walk the gauntlet on city manager pay scale these days, if I'm not mistaken. They have upped the ante for city manager. Do we have time for one more question? Right? You got a quick question?
It's more of any suggestions for us?
Pardon?
Any suggestions for us as...
Hello, my name is Garza, and it's more of you have any tips or any skills you would teach us as early college students and students who take advanced classes, is there any way we could balance out our personal lives and our school lives as you do with all the stress, the pressure, and all the frustration you get from your job? Is there any way how you would teach us to balance that from it affecting our own personal lives?
Well, right, life starts early in life, right?
Well, I will tell you, I don't know if I could be a high school student in 2024. I think the pressures that you young people are under, with whether it's just the technology to manage your day-to-day lives, or just the competing interest or social media and all the things that you undertake. I'll start with a couple of things that I would just say, just if I was giving general guidance, which I do often, is first of all, just as a young person, understand that choices that you make, before we even start to talk about school, the choices that you make, the things you do in the moment that may be impulsive or anything of that nature, just understand that you've got to step back sometimes and just understand the magnitude of what one issue or wrong turn or wrong group of people that you're hanging out with can do to cascade to difficulties in your life, right? I'll just say that right off the bat. So in the shortness of that, that means find ways to make sure that you do not end up getting into trouble. Anything to do with the criminal justice system, that is a system in some cases that will impact and affect you the rest of your life. So I would just say that for one. As well as just choices when it comes to the things that I think your parents often talk to you about when it comes to just living life and things that can wait until in fact you actually become a full-grown adult. I would say heed those things. As it relates to school and all the inner workings and the stress, whether it's wanting to work to make more money and to have things in your pocket or doing whatever, I would say to you, if possible, find ways to step back and focus on your education, period. And if you do get a job at this early age, learn from it as it relates to the perspective of what you ultimately don't want to do with the rest of your life. Meaning that if you get a job and it's not fun and you don't like it and it's just a way to make money, keep that in your mind, because that hopefully will keep you focused on your education, going to college or going to another type of applied science curriculum. But you should always figure out what you don't want to do, and then figure out what you need to go do to prevent you from ever having to do that. And I would say take time for your own mental health, meaning when it's getting too complicated or too stressful, or someone's not saying the things that make you feel the way you should about yourself. Have an ability to want to talk to someone if you need to. But if you have no one to talk to, just step away from the situation and just really cycle through your own process of how you slow yourself down, and then trying to find a way to refresh yourself to, again, not make decisions when you're not in the right state of mind. And then take advantage of every resource that the school has or that the city may have or anyone else if you're ever feeling as though you're not able to stay and keep afloat, to ensure that, again, you don't crash and burn or end up in a situation that is not going to be beneficial for you or your family going forward. But I know it's tough, and I know keeping up with class, studying, and just trying to live a normal life, this is but 4 years of a long, long life if you live it the right way. And then there may be 2 more, because obviously this is a school that you can actually graduate with an associate degree, and you're gonna be 2 years ahead of the game. And that's why I say focus on school, because your overall long-term opportunities for income and growth will be exponential if you succeed at this school and then go on and complete your degree. You will make more money, and it's not about what you do in 2024, 2025, 26, and 27. It's what you're going to do in 2030 and beyond to provide for you and your family. In some cases, things that they weren't even able to provide you with. And so again, I just encourage you to stay focused on your academics, stay focused on your own mental health and wellness, and to stay focused on each other. Make sure that you look out for your friends and encourage them to do the same thing. So thank you for the question. That was a great question.
Students, write this down. Your secret code on the day is RED. R-E-D, don't forget that. RED. You'll understand what I mean by that. Mr. Broadnax, thank you so much on behalf of our students, our principal, Ms. Sanchez, Mr. Lacey, Mr. Harris. I'm so appreciative of you being here. I want to say, guys, we thank you so much for being here and sharing your words of wisdom. We have a little gift for you before you leave, Makai, who I did not realize when I asked all those questions. This is a certificate of our appreciation for you to hang on your wall or your desk. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your wise words. Students, one last round of applause.